Okay, that's a smack.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Good girl. That's a very good girl. We're going to go in the tub. Are you ready? Oh, we can do this. Good girl. That was very scary, I know, but you did very well. Thank you. You will find as I'm working with the dogs, I will ask them to do something for me. And usually they will. And then after they do as I ask, I say thank you. And some of the dogs will look at me like, you know the T word. And it's not treat, it is thank you. Dogs are very polite if you give them a chance to, where that they will do as you ask if you ask nicely. What I'm doing right now is cleaning animal glands. That is not poop. This is the part that most homeowners don't know how to do. And I also only work from the outside of the dog, so I don't irritate their rectum at all. Thank you. You're being very sweet. The biggest secret in working with dogs is to let them know what you want. So that is what we do. We let them know what we want. We're going to go to the table now. Are you ready? Don't you feel good? Okay, we're going to go over here. Are you ready? I'm going to pick you up. Good job. What a good girl you are. She says, wow, I did it. How did I get over here? That was so easy. Now right now you see that her restraint is around her neck. The only time that I do that is when I'm right here with the dog. One of the things that we do that animal control really like is that we put them into a harness like that. They cannot hurt. They can't hurt their neck. They're not being choked ever. And it just makes it a lot happier for them. So we always put them onto a harness to dry them. Or if we're not around them, we're going to walk away from the table for a moment, they go onto a harness. You are such a good kid. I've had customers ask me, how come the dogs are so good? I said, well, you can handle them different ways. You can handle them to where that they know that it's going to be bad by pushing them around. It's a matter of touch. You can do a very gentle touch and get a lot done, or you can be very, very rough with them. With everything that you do, you want firm but gentle. You have to do certain things to move them where you need them, particularly when you're doing a lot of scissoring or clipping. Then they have to be a little more still, but you still want to be firm but gentle. And it takes a while to get comfortable enough with the dogs to be able to do that. You're a good kid. Should we show Mom how we do toenails? You got the squishy face right now. Can I have the foot? Thank you. Now see, when I'm doing toenails, I'm not going to fight with her a lot. As you can see, I'm just barely holding her foot. Gently love. Gently love. Very good.
Good girl, Chata.
Thank you. I know it's not what we want. I know it's scary, but I'm very careful with you. Gently, gently, gently. I know it's scary, but you can do this. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Let me see. Almost there. Almost there. Can we do one more? Thank you. See, that wasn't so bad. She says, I have toenails that curl down and they're scary. You see how easy that is? Just take a deep breath. You're doing fine. The back toes usually are a little bit easier. The front ones are a little more sensitive. You're kind of like us. Our fingers are very sensitive too. The back toes usually are a little bit easier. The front ones are a little more sensitive. You're kind of like us. Our fingers are very sensitive too. We do not use flea shampoos unless the veterinarian recommends them, because they are a poison. For the dog to be bathed with a poison that we used to use all the time, such as lindane or malathion, were actual shampoos that we used, would get into our system and can cause all kinds of fibromyalgia, arthritis, etc. We would use that on the dogs. Well, one dog is not bad, so if you're doing it at home. But if I'm bathing 10, 12, 15 dogs in a day and my hands are in this and I'm absorbing it all day long, day after day.
And the dogs, they're only absorbing it one time.
Yes, for a very short time. And then usually when it's rinsed off. But while it's sitting on the dog killing off the fleas, it's a type of neurotoxin that's going to cause issue with certain dogs, and definitely with groomers. The average length of time for most groomers is right around 5 to 7 years. Since we're not using those shampoos and we're not getting sick, and we're using hydraulic tables now, 12 years is not uncommon. To find somebody that grooms 40 years plus is very unusual. without getting burned out. Every day is basically the same, but every day is different. Physical injuries for dog groomers usually end up being picking up a dog that is hard to throw your back out. Your arms can get tired, your neck can get tired, but bites, oh yeah. I've got broken fingers from being bitten. I've got scratches all over my hands, my arms. Sometimes when I'm doing puppies, because they have such sharp toenails, and we use the Dremel now, but they'll hang on. Puppies will hang on. And so sometimes I get marks up and down my arms. I've got scars all over. No big deal. And I used to groom cats, but I don't do cats anymore. After being bitten 3 times, seriously, and having cat scratch fever twice, which is a real thing, the doctor told me, he said, don't do that anymore. But I do cats' toenails, but that's all I do, no bathing. And it's hard to find groomers that will do cats because of the danger. They bite, and they also carry with them certain bacteria in their mouth and in their toenails that can make a person very sick. Therefore, you get cat scratch fever, which is kind of like cellulitis, but it's more than that because it can be a bloodborne. My mother picked up a cat just about a year ago that she thought was her cat. It bit her. She ended up 4 days in the hospital, and it was cat scratch fever, and it became a bloodborne infection that they had to get rid of. Most often with the dogs, if we're bitten, it's not that serious. But as I said, I had a couple of my fingers broken from a Cocker Spaniel, and all we were trying to do was to muzzle it. The owner couldn't muzzle it either, but I will not forget that particular little dog. We don't groom that.
You joining Toastmasters, did that have anything to do with your business?
I didn't think so at first. I joined Toastmasters on a lark. I wanted to do something different. So what I did was to go to a meeting. I said, I cannot speak in public. If I have 4 people in front of me, I'm scared to death. I cannot do this. Sometimes I'd have more than 4 people coming in to talk to me. When I would allow multiple families in, we'd become tongue-tied. I'd want to run away. Luckily, I had 2 people that were a little more vocal than what I was, and let them take over. So I could say, hi, how are you? Marilyn. But I went to a Toastmasters meeting on a lark. I wanted to see what it was. I was told about Toastmasters, so I went to Toastmasters. I found out I loved it. It was not anything I considered to be business related till I found out how many ums, ahs, and speaking at the back of my throat, not trying to be understood, not vocalizing properly, not using my mouth to actually make words, that I decided I'm going to stay with Toastmasters. And then I got my competent communicator. I also learned that table topics were not as frightening as what I thought they would be, which has really, really helped with answering questions for the customer. I feel that I can, with confidence, they can ask me any question. I either know the answer or I don't. Put together the background of what they're trying to ask. Interpret the question.
And they don't know how to ask the question.
No.
They don't know what they're saying.
Exactly.
Yes.
So therefore, it took me a little while, but I've noticed that since I've done that, when I do speak, that I get more, they believe me.
Yeah, you have a little more authority. You're less likely to have an argument with the customer.
That is true. That is true. But because I know what I'm saying and I'm comfortable with what I'm saying, then I can tell the customer, you're wrong, in a very nice way. Which I have had to do on occasion, yeah. Or to explain to them the consequences of what it is that they're asking. So if they're bringing a totally matted dog and they want it to be fluffy, I can tell them this is not good for the dog. It has nothing to do with me. Yes, I can do that. I was trained many, many years ago that when a customer come in, the customer was always right, regardless of what they're asking. And the dogs would go home and their skin would be all irritated from doing what they asked, which was usually brushing them out. That we don't do that now. We can trim them down, start over. If you want long, then you have to work with us. If you're not willing to do that, you can have a long dog, but it's going to be short. Eventually, it's going to be all cut off. And we can do that now with a smile rather than to feel aggressive or basically to tell them they're wrong. And I just noticed something that Toastmasters has taught me not to do. Yeah. Which is to twiddle my thumbs and massage my hands and be otherwise distracting.
Yeah.
And I've learned that with the customers not to do that. So it has worked out very well for me to be a Toastmaster on many different levels. But business-wise, I feel that it really has helped a great deal for my confidence. That I can talk to anybody, doesn't matter whether It's a person that would be considered not as educated, or if I have a doctor or an attorney come in, I can treat them and speak a language that they know that I know what I'm talking about, rather than being fearful. You're a doctor, I can't talk to you.
Now, how has the pandemic affected your business?
Since I'm phase 2, and all dog groomers and veterinarians are phase 2, when we were closed down the 26th of March, we had to shut our doors and we were done. There was nothing more we could do. Close our doors, that's it.
Right.
We could not do toenails. We could not do bathing. There's nothing we could do. We were closed down for 10 weeks. And we weren't the only one. Across the street, they had to close down their grooming. The other 2 groomers that I mentioned that are just up here on the hill had to close down. Veterinarians were not allowed to do normal things like toenails unless it was an emergency. Animal glands unless it was an emergency. Bathing only if it was an emergency. And even now, they're still affected because you have to sit in the parking lot and you don't go in with your dogs anymore, which they used to do. So they're still affected. I'm affected only in that I can have as many dogs in here as I can handle, but I can only have one family or one person in the lobby at a time because my lobby is so small, which most people seem to they respect that. I've had people ask me, well, if you were the governor of Washington State, what would you do differently? And I said, people would hate me. The little bit of medical that I know. Okay, for example, let's say that my dog has parvo, which is a deadly disease to dogs, or has kennel cough. And I say, oh, my dog has kennel cough, let's go have a play date. It doesn't matter. If your dog gets sick, it's okay. And I've had people look at me like, no, I don't want your dog around me. Well, why is the COVID virus any different? It's exactly the same thing. If you're sick, don't come around me. Go isolate until you're better. Then you can come around. It makes sense then. So if I were the governor, I would probably be more hated because I would have an absolute zero tolerance. I don't know exactly what I would do, but I know that I would lock a lot of things.
What do you think about when you're on your way home?
Usually what I'm trying to do at that point is, well, my life is very segmented. So I have compartmentalized. It could be thinking, okay, I've got to work on paying the bills for the shop. I have a group home. I might as well call it a group home. I've got a couple that stays at my house. I've got 3 single persons that stay at my house. On occasion, we have another one that drops in and out. So I have a Toastmaster in my house with me too. And that is Leslie. So I have basically a group home, and making certain that the bills are paid for the house, that there's enough food in the house to feed everyone. Hopefully that they are being as careful as what I am, not to bring COVID in. So far, we've all done very well. Do I have a speech tonight when I go to the Toastmasters meeting? Or what is my role? Or I'm working on a speech. Just listening to music sometimes just to completely change. I have the advantage here that on occasion I can just be quiet and work on a speech, which is what I was doing when you showed up. I'm working on a speech and doing the vocal variety for it and listening to it and taping it so I can listen to it later and say, oh, that was really awful. How many so's could I put into a paragraph?
Yeah.
The other things that I do when I go home is just kind of enjoy. Even though I have heavy traffic, because of traffic, I go slower. So therefore, I've got more time to see Mount Rainier, to see the change in colors, to see the sky, which gives me a certain peace and calm in a very busy world. But I do keep myself purposely busy because this is a time for a lot of people that is very depressing. People are sick or dying around us. They have the news, always horrible things going on in the news, the fighting, seeing people fighting with each other, the riots, knowing what's going on in other parts of the world can be overwhelming.
How do you waste time?
How do I waste time? Usually on Facebook, just kind of going through and looking. But quite often when I go on Facebook, I get certain ads that are up that will pique my interest, and I will delve more into it, such as mushroom farming. I know nothing about it. Well, I know a whole lot more now than what I did before.
What kind of mushrooms?
Well, they're saying that the oyster mushrooms are the easiest to grow, and looking at, so you can make $1,000 a week growing mushrooms in a very small room. Second income. Another thing I've also been studying a great deal on is quilting, because I have made show quilts and put them into the Puyallup Fair. I've gotten nothing out of them, as far as first, second, third place, or mostly as participation. They used to have also the challenge. You would have to make a challenge quilt. You'd have a theme. They send you the most ugly, awful material, usually about like a fat quarter, so it's about 18 inches square. You are to make a quilt that is a wall hanging type, about that size, using all of that material that you can, along with the theme. There are a couple of times I've put them in, and I've tried to be as creative as possible. Sometimes my sewing skills are not that great on the sewing machine. It took me a little while, but it's just the lark. The Puyallup Fair is one of the biggest fairs in the whole world.
Wow.
And I have entered quilts in one of the biggest fairs in the whole world on a lark.
Wow.
It's like, oh, just try things.
Just try things. That's all you got to do. In life, just live. Just try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my biggest fun, I'd say that my biggest faux pas would probably be the millennium, the year 2000. That year leading up to it, we had all of this, the computers are all going to die, we're going to be without food, there's going to be rioting, kind of like what they're talking about now. But there's going to be rioting, we're not going to have our telephones, we're not going to have water because of the pumps not working, because of the electrical grid going down, because of all the computers not working. I bought into it. Hook, line, and sinker. So what I did is I started gardening. I canned everything I could. I would go to the secondhand store. I would buy 100 quarts at a time. Then all the lids. And I would fill those. Then I would go back and get more and fill those. Then I learned how to can meat. So I canned meat. I ended up filling up, like grocery store, with paper products, spices, toilet paper, towels. I had all the foods. I had drinks. I had everything available. I filled up a 2-car garage like a grocery store.
Wow.
And people would walk in and go, I know where I'm going to go if something happens. But my thought was, we were being told that neighbors are going to start fighting against neighbors for food or because of the fact they are without. I said, fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be the star of the show. I am going to have so much food that we could have block parties every night. Until we start getting a little better. And it's probably going to happen in the middle of winter because the year 2000 is January 1. Just my thinking. January 1. Well, we had an earthquake not too long after that. A lot of my jars fell and broke.
And the refrigerator probably stopped working for a few days.
Yes. Luckily, I had already planned on that we would not have electricity. So what I had in there was not quite so serious. We were able to use that up right away. But as far as, I had probably about 2,000 jars, not counting cans, of stuff. As I said, I go buy 100 at a time. And this was over the course of summer into the fall. And then came to be Thanksgiving. I'm thinking, I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I have no place to put things. There are cases on the floor now. And then we had this earthquake. And it was just like, okay. So
I remember that earthquake. That was an interesting one. I was working graveyard at Exodus Communications, which is a data center where Microsoft had servers, etc., basically supporting the internet. I was in bed sleeping, and I felt the earthquake, and I opened my eyes, and I didn't panic or run for the door, but I was watching. I lived in Gig Harbor at the time. I looked up, and I saw the bookshelf, hanging, the one that's mounted on the wall, and the books were going like this, swaying, but rather gently. And I thought, they're not going to even fall. They're not even going to fall sideways. And they didn't. And then once it was all over, I went in the living room, and I just checked on my husband. He's sitting there watching the TV, and neither one of us thought we should go get our son from school. That would have been silly. They tell you not to do that in the first place. And I just went back to bed, and then I turned the TV on for a few minutes to see how bad it was. And then they have cameras all over Seattle looking for stuff.
Yeah.
That was a weird earthquake. That was really strange. But I remember not even being afraid. I just analyzed it. I was analyzing the force and how it felt, and just like an engineer.
Yeah, there were a couple of places. My cousin up in Seattle, his place, apparently they built on quicksand type stuff, and then it turned into a slurry. The whole building was damaged. But, for down here, it wasn't that bad, except for my quart jars fell over and broke. It could have been a whole lot worse. I was here in the shop at the time. And so I picked up the dog from here, and I just stood right there where I have all of these walls and the pillar. I figured that was the safest place to be. And then when it was all done, people come running in to get their dogs, and it's like, we're all fine. We're all fine. But they wanted to take their dogs and go home, so I said, fine, we'll do this another day. Everything's fine. Even my gas did not get shut off from it, which I was rather surprised, because it's supposed to go off when you have an earthquake.
Automatically?
Mm-hmm. And it didn't do that. Sweetheart, do you want to get down? You have been so patient and so nice. So what do I want to do in 5 years? I will definitely be a Toastmaster. What I will be doing with Toastmasters, I'm not sure. Maybe working on my 3rd or 4th DTM by that time. No, it takes about 2 years, to really spend the time to really get quality work. Mm-hmm. Will I be something to do with a division and the areas as far as being one of the officers? Possibly. I'm a division director now. This is my 2nd year. I cannot do it next year. So I have to step out and let somebody else do. Let somebody else do that. But most likely, I will be some kind of an officer for Toastmasters in the beyond the club level, because I enjoy that. I have learned that people really are enjoyable, that they are nice, that they are interesting, which is something I did not believe before I joined Toastmasters.
That's kind of similar to myself. People in general, we're uninteresting to me. And I'm an introvert, but I'm an extrovert. And part of the problem is that I just don't know them, and I don't have opportunities to get to know them. And one of the reasons why I started my channel was to meet people, one-to-one. Mm-hmm. Because in a group, it's not the same.
That's true. Because, especially if at a Toastmaster meeting, there are so many people, especially when we're meeting in person, there's so much noise and so much activity.
Yeah. And it's a structured meeting.
Yes.
And you only have before and after and the break, and it's really...
Good girl. That's why I put it down.
At the live club, to do that bantering. Mm-hmm. You can't really do that online.
I find it hard with the chats.
Yeah.
And when we first started with Zoom, I really fought that. Almost tooth and nail. I really did not want to do anything Zoom. I'm finding that it's really much more comfortable now, and I'm meeting people that I didn't meet before. We are getting trainers from out of the area, which is so nice. Well, I'm meeting more people. Mm-hmm. I won't say that I'm getting to know them, but I'm meeting more people. Right. That's nice.
Yeah, that's what I like about Toastmasters. And also, it gives me a reason to meet people, a productive reason, rather than just hanging out, which doesn't really do anything in the long run. Deb did that with Roxanne Strutz, owner of Pets Are Precious here in Puyallup, Washington. Thank you, Roxanne.
And thank you, Deb.
Awesome. And thank you, Chata.
You were very, very good. And you showed how doing toenails can be scary. She says, yes, it was, but look at them, how pretty they are. Okay, well, thank you.